speaking to the seniors specifically now, and you did miss out on some traditions. But you have a story unlike anyone else in the room. If your children and your grandchildren, you will be able to say, I remember the year. Let me tell you the story. I'll be speaking to that in a little bit, but before we do that, I want to let the seniors know, as a church, we celebrate you and we congratulate you. And now the part that's going to make me an unpopular fellow, more unpopular, I'm going to read a roll call of our seniors that have either the membership of the church or long-standing fellowship with the church, have been part of our youth through the years. Some of them are here, some of them are not. But I will read a roll call of those seniors that have been a fundamental part of this church over the last many years. Maisie Cook, Emma Craig. I left out the part where I'd like you to come forward. Emma, I know you're not sure. Bobby, can you hit the altar lights? Thank you, brother. Just right on up here. I want everybody to see your grown-up adult face. Remember when you were a squirt? Well, I do, yeah. Amber Evans. Bryce Fisher. Yes, as they come up here. Harry Johnston. I haven't seen Harry this morning. Faith Camp. Samantha Kissel. Gage Lyon. Shay Murley. Yes, folks, that is Shay Murley. It's a good look, man. It works on it. It works on it. Allie Miller. Michael Schuster. Tucker Shaw. And Miss Emily. Were you nervous, Emily?
No.
Okay.
I was hoping you wouldn't call my name.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you the Beaver Dam Tippy Valley class, except for him, of 2020. This is the part that makes me unpopular. We're going to start with Shay because, you know, he's a grown-up and Shay and everything, so she's not bashful. Where you graduated from? Your grade point average. We know where you guys graduated from. Tell us what your plans are when you leave church today. What is the rest of your life? What's your hopes and dreams? Where are you going? What are you going to do? Who are you going to be?
Okay, I'm Shay. I just graduated from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute with a degree in electrical engineering, and I'm going to be doing automation consulting in Chicago.
Good.
In Chicago money, it pays okay.
I'm Emma. I'm going to Earlham College. I'm going to play basketball up there. And my major in my future, I don't really know. I change it all the time. But as of right now, I'm going to study psychology, and I'd want to take it into like being kind of like a child therapist, child psychologist kind of thing. So yeah.
Oh, and heads up, the first 2 years of college, you'll change your major some more.
My name's Amber, and I'm going to the University of Indianapolis to major as a nurse.
I'm Tucker, and I'll be going to IUPUI to major in business.
I'm Emily. I'm going to go to Grace to study entrepreneurial business and eventually have my own business.
Congratulations. And while you're up there, the lovely Miss Wanda would like a picture of you with the class of 2020 balloon figuring prominently. You want a couple on either side? Okay, how about it? Can't hide behind the balloon. So get where you can see Wanda. There we go. Thank you, guys. By way of another announcement before I get into the message, those of you that we care to stay, there will be a celebration time downstairs with cake and donuts and fruit and something to drink that I'm not aware of at this point. But come down and celebrate with this year's graduates. They have had it pretty rough last 3 months. So come down and give them a hearty congratulations and celebrate with them. Graduation Sunday for me is kind of a special Sunday for, oh yeah, kids, bye. Young people, hit the basement. Thanks for helping. Okay, all 4 of you. Good luck, Chuck. Now he got all the good kids. It presents a challenge, because what do you say that might have any meaning for seniors and those who will be seniors in the not too distant future? So what I say to them, I want you guys. Yeah, you guys were lakeside. You kind of got the Cliff Notes version. Maybe a little more. But I think my comments are geared just as much toward adults. But in my mind is the graduating class today. Because it's a special event every year, but this year is an extraordinary year to be a senior. I'd like to start by telling you a story. On Wednesday night with King's Kids, our normal routine, for those of you that may not know, we show up at 6 o'clock, we have supper at 6. At 6:30, the kids all come up, sit on the front 2 rows. Pastor Books tells them an appropriate Bible study or a Bible story. Then they have a time of music, they sing, and then they go down and do crafts. And every Wednesday night, it's become a tradition for several years. I start off with Once Upon a Time, and then I pause, and all the kids will correct me, no, Once Upon a Time is a fairy tale. So then I will start the story with a long, long time ago back in the olden days. And they all believe I know those stories on account of, I was alive in the olden days. This comes from Scripture, true story. It's documented in extra-biblical history outside of the Bible. 450 years before the time of Christ, the Persian Empire was the greatest empire the world had ever known up to that point. Until the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire was the most vast. It went from India to Spain. It went from Eastern Europe down into Middle Africa. It was ruled by a man named King Ahasuerus. We know him as Xerxes the First. Y'all heard of Xerxes somewhere? Nobody. Okay, there's a, okay. And before I get too deep into it, I need to put a footnote to it that as we go through the story, remember, we live in a democratic republic. We elect representatives to go to Washington and vote on our behalf. At least in theory, that's what they're supposed to do, is to keep our goodwill in mind as they pass legislation. We have a Supreme Court that can say that's unconstitutional. In a sovereign nation where there's a king, what the king says is law. There is no Congress to meet and vote on it. There is no Supreme Court to overrule it. If the king speaks it, that's what it is. So King Xerxes is running the Persian Empire, which is modern-day Iran, and he invites all the princes from all the provinces that he's conquered, and dignitaries from all over the empire to come and have this big banquet, which he throws for them in their honor. Hundreds of these princes and dignitaries, they were all men, which is another cultural thing. But after they had eaten, after they had drank probably too much, Xerxes invites them to sit back and relax, and he invited his wife Vashti to come and dance for them. They didn't have radio or television or live bands back then, so he invited his wife to come and dance for them. She refused. As you can guess, refusing the king is probably not a good thing to do. He divorced her and banished her from the empire, which would have been at least 1,000 miles away. Where she went, we don't know. So here's the king, embarrassed, humiliated, on his throne, without a wife. He decrees that messengers be sent to all the provinces throughout the empire, and they find the most beautiful young ladies that they can find. They bring them into the capital of Shushan. They give them all a bath. They put on royal robes. They put on jewelry. They put on makeup. And then the king, when this whole retinue of young ladies was set before him, he went down the row and picked out the most beautiful one of all, Esther, and made her his king, or his queen. What he didn't know was that Esther was a Jew. There's a villain in this story by the name of Haman. And Haman was number 2 to the king only. He was the king's right-hand man. If Haman said it, he had the rule of law because he had the king's stamp of approval. He was a very, very powerful man. And he loved to parade himself up and down the streets, and he loved to watch all the people bow and pay homage to him. One day he was in his parade, and everybody's bowing except one man. That man's name was Mordecai. He was Esther's uncle, also a Jew. Haman stopped the procession. He commanded Mordecai to kneel and bow and pay homage. And Mordecai said, I bow my knee to no man but the Lord God Jehovah in heaven. And infuriated Haman. Infuriated him. He went back and told the king. He manipulated the king. This man's got to die. But not only this man, because he's a Jew, all Jews in the empire are to be exterminated. And the king went along with it. Haman was a man of great influence, and he manipulated the king into signing that decree that all Jews would be exterminated in just a matter of a few months. On a certain day, at a certain point in time. Word went out throughout the entire empire. When Mordecai heard, he sent word to Queen Esther. And he told Queen Esther, you're our only hope. You have the king's ear. You're his wife. Surely you can go into the king and talk some sense to him. Get him to rescind this order. There's a conversation. It happened through messengers because Mordecai could not go in the palace where Esther was. So it's happening through messages. But that's where we pick up the story in Esther 4 and verse 11. Esther replied to Mordecai, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court of the king who has not been called into the king's presence, the king has but one law, to put them to death. That's the king's law. You come in without being invited, you're executed. The only exception is if the king holds out his golden scepter, his standard that shows he is the ultimate ruler of the nation. I myself, says Esther, had not been called to go into the king for 30 days. So they went and told Mordecai Esther's response. Then Mordecai told them to go back and tell Esther, do not think in your heart you will escape the king's palace any more than any of the other Jews. For if you remain silent, relief and deliverance will still arise for the Jews from another place, but your father's house will perish. And the key line to this whole story is, Mordecai's final statement to Esther is, who knows, but for such a time as this, you were placed upon the earth. We don't know how old Esther was. But Mordecai poses the question that I would like to pose today. Who knows, but for such a time as this, you were placed upon the earth. As I thought of what I might say today to the class of 2020, today's message soon came into focus. It flowed out from what I wanted to convey to this year's senior class, but it is also appropriate for the classes behind them that will soon follow them, and for any other adult in the room. To the senior class specifically, I am sorry. Personally, I am truly sorry that you did not get to spend your last 3 months of your senior year, probably the best 3 months of all 12 years, being a senior. You got all your credits done, you got your plans made for after high school, you're just having a good time the last 3 months. I'm sorry you didn't get to have a traditional senior year, that you didn't get to walk down the aisle. You didn't get to go to a senior prom. It's just not fair. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to your parents. It's not fair to your family. But life isn't fair. Ask anyone who lost their job or their career to the coronavirus. Ask anyone who's just been diagnosed with cancer. Life isn't fair. Ask a mother who just lost her infant child to some disease. Life isn't fair. Ask any parent whose teenager died in an accident with a drunk driver. Life isn't fair. That's a documentable fact of life. Sometimes unforeseen circumstances or tragedies will catch us unaware. Sometimes other people in your life, sometimes other people that you trust will treat you unfairly. They will be mean, they'll be manipulative, they will cheat you, they will lie to you, they will lie about you. They'll take advantage of you. And none of us can control the unexpected circumstances of life. None of us can control the unpreventable tragedies of life. Lightning will strike where lightning will strike. We have no control over that. None of us can control the actions of other people. None of us can control how other people treat us. And I heard that in the video. What we can control, however, is how we respond to those unforeseen circumstances. What we are in control of is our response. How do we react to those people who treat us unfairly? How do we respond and how do we react are under our control. Mother Teresa was a Catholic nun. She died just a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. She spent 60 years in India, the most populated country in the world, ministering to the diseased, the broken, the downcast, the outcast, the dying. She took a vow of poverty. She chose to spend all of her adult life ministering to those people. Late in life, Sister Teresa wrote these words: "People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people might accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true friends. But succeed anyway. If you're honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they might be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do the good anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it's between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway. What Mother Teresa is trying to say is, the world can come against you. The unexpected can happen. Lightning can strike where lightning can strike. We have no control over some of those things. You have absolute control over how you respond to them. The choices you make and how you respond is a choice. You can respond in anger. You can respond in vengeance. Other people can ruin your reputation. And I know that's big with teenagers. They can gossip, they can lie about you, they can go on Facebook and Twitter and make up stories, they can kill your reputation. But you know what? Nobody can touch your character. Your character is what you say it is. I know men and women that have firmly established who they are in this world. They are people of character. They have lines in the sand they will not cross. And it doesn't matter who lies about them, who cajoles them, who teases them, who makes fun of them. They set their own standards. And most of the ones I know set them on biblical principles. Mother Teresa's words are not directed toward how you're treated in life. They're directed how you respond to how you are treated. And to the seniors, you're standing on a precipice. All that has gone before is now over. It's past. Your future is an open book of blank pages, and every day the words written on the pages of your life will be the result of decisions that you make. Even the outcome of unexpected circumstances will be based on the decisions you make about how you respond to them. Most people blame other people for outside circumstances, for how their life turns out. You know, we're a people that love the blame game. When things don't turn out the way we want, we got to find someone or something to blame it on. But Susie or Sally or Billy or the coronavirus or whatever. I want you to know, seniors and underclassmen, 99% of how your life will turn out is based on how you decide it will turn out. Decisions that you make. You're not children anymore. Your parents used to make your decisions for you. You seniors, you're on your own. When you go away to college, you can decide to smoke and drink and run around for the wrong crowd. You can make all sorts of crazy, dumb decisions. I know. Ask me later if you want to know how I know. I read a cartoon strip not long ago, Charlie Brown. There were 2 or 3 frames, and I don't remember what they were. But you get down to the second to last frame, and one of his friends says, "You only live once." Charlie Brown says, "No, you only die once. You live every day." You get up every day with a new opportunity to make new decisions about how your life is going to turn out. And something I've known for a long time that didn't really come into focus, into words, until just this last week thinking about today. For the most part, as a general rule, recognizing there might be some exceptions, but generally, there are 3 different paths you can take in life, and you can choose which path you want to take. You can choose to live a sufficient life. You can choose to live a successful life. Or you can choose to live a significant life. There's 3 different things. And I've known this because I have been through the first 2 phases, and I'll let history decide if my life had a significant component. But early on in high school, after high school, in college, my 20s, I lived a sufficient life. I just needed enough money to buy my gas and get me into movies and keep me in cigarettes. I didn't need any more than that. I was living life the way I wanted to, having fun. I wasn't chasing any dream or chasing any pile of money or fame or anything. I just had a sufficient life. My motto was, that's good enough. I'm smart. I'm very smart. I'm intelligent. I've got a high intelligence. I know because my mother had me tested. The doctor told her the results of the test. I was too smart for my own good. I got C's in high school, a couple D's. You know, my father and I had some conversations about my report cards. And remember, you know, that's good enough was my motto. I only needed to get good enough grades to stay in sports. That was what motivated me. As long as I could stay in sports, C's were fine. I told my dad, I said, Dad, C, that means average. What's wrong with average, Dad? You want some kind of nerd for a son? Okay, yeah. Then some of you gotta wear white socks. Okay, Dad, you got a nerd. But what's wrong with average, Dad? That was my argument. You see, I was living a sufficient life. That's good enough. It was adequate. My early 30s, I decided a sufficient life wasn't good enough. I wanted a successful life. I was already in the workforce, and I saw the path to climb the corporate ladder. So I went to college. I improved myself. I went to college right out of the military, and I did the same thing I did in high school because I had a sufficient life. That's good enough. But 5 years out of college, I stayed out 5 years. When I decided I wanted a successful life, I went back to college. You know, straight A's was no problem. Because I was chasing something. I had a goal. I had a purpose. I wanted to be successful. And you know, the world measures success in fame, power, money. You can chase any one of them and call it a success. The success always takes hard work. Peyton Manning and LeBron James didn't get to the top of their professional careers by sitting home wishing they were at the top. They were in the gym. They were watching game films. They were planning strategy. They were practicing their skills. It took hard work. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates didn't get to be wealthy by sitting home on the couch watching TV wishing they had money. They got up and got busy. They became successful by the world standards. I got busy and went to work chasing success. I climbed on the career ladder with both hands and both feet. But in the end, success, as the world measures it, is a hollow victory. It can leave you empty and longing for more. The old saying, I climbed the corporate ladder, and when I got to the top, I found out the ladder was against the wrong wall. In the end, we all die. Wealth, fame, and power, it dies with us. It means nothing. So you can choose a life that is sufficient. You can choose a life that is successful, or you can choose a life that is significant. And I'll leave it to others. This is where I leave myself as an illustration. I'll leave that to others. Jeremiah 29:11. God spoke to the prophet Jeremiah, says, you all know the verse. For I know the plans I've made for you, declares the Lord, plans not to harm you, but to prosper you, to give you hope and a future. That's God's plan for you. God has a particular, listen, God has a particular plan not for you in aggregate, but for you personally. And the way I understand Scripture, God is perfect. God knows all things. He's all-powerful. God does not make mistakes. If God makes a plan for Butch, it's the best plan and the possible plan in the world for Butch. Problem is, God also gave us free will. And I can walk over here and step into God's plan. You know, I felt the call to ministry at 17. I answered it at 40. I can step into God's plan, or I can go over here and be Butch with a sufficient life, smoking my cigarettes, driving around, keeping the bar low. You know, if you keep the bar low enough, you'll always succeed.
Amen.
You'll never experience failure. Just lower the bar a little more. God has a perfect plan for each and every one of us. Think of that. His plan for you is not for a sufficient life. His plan for you is not for a successful life. God doesn't care if you're successful. I think God even blesses people that bless Him. God doesn't care how much wealth or fame you have. He cares what you use it for. God's plan for you is that you have a significant life. A life that matters. A life that matters in God's kingdom. A life that matters in eternity. And I can tell you, any life lived outside of God's plan, I can tell you this from experience, is a wasted life. I might as well take the first 40 years of my life, aside from the experiences I gained, I might as well take the first 40 years and flush them down the toilet. I wasted it. A significant life is one that makes a difference. It matters in God's economy. It's in harmony with God's word and will for your life. It lines up with God's plan for you. But that free will thing comes along. And we're allowed to make a decision. And good decisions have good consequences, and bad decisions have bad consequences. I learned that the hard way also. Mordecai's words to Esther still ring true today. Who knows, but for such a time as this, you were placed upon the earth. What is God's plan for your life? If you don't know it, you probably soon will. I knew God's plan for my life, and I ran from it. Why were you placed on the earth? What's God's plan for you? What time such as this were you born? As I said, there are better examples of a significant life than my own, so I will point to a few of them. The Apostle Paul and all the disciples died as martyrs. They were not wealthy, they were not powerful. They became famous, but that's not what they were chasing. They were consumed with spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ, and they paid a price for it. They died for it. Esther risked her own life. Incidentally, the king pointed his scepter at her. She did not die. He rescinded the order to execute all the Jews because she walked into his presence. She knew she could die. She saved the Jews from extinction. She was significant. Mother Teresa was a person that had a significant life. No wealth, no fame. She was famous, but that's not what she chased. No wealth, no power, no influence. 60 years. Lives were changed and people came to know the love of God. I know that you know other significant people. Jeff Schreiber was in the video. A significant man that lived a significant life. Before him, many of you remember Scott Bibler. I've been in his office more than once when he's had his troubled student in there and he prayed for him. In school. A significant man, a significant life. I can think of some living examples. The first one that I always go to is Brooke Smalley. Went to college, got her RN. Had a great job down in Indianapolis in a hospital. Big salary, house, car, everything. God's plan for her was to go live her life in Haiti. Not go visit for a one-week mission trip. Go live her life in Haiti. She sold her house, sold her car, quit her job, went to Haiti. 7 years later, she's still there. I can think of some other examples that you know. Cammie Lyman, a significant young woman. Shelley Engel, Mrs. Early, Brother Bill, all educators. None of them went into education to get well. Did you go into education to get rich? No? So it worked. It worked. Okay. But I guarantee you he made a significant impact on the lives that God put in front of him.
Amen. Amen.
And you don't have to be an educator, and you don't have to be a pastor, and you don't have to go to India or Haiti. You can be a significant person wherever you're at. Carpenter, doctor, lawyer. It don't matter your occupation. Is your life significant right where God has put you? I think of Lisa Adams and Terry. Lisa, the impact she has on those little children who remember her, how many, 25 years later? How long have you been at it? Some. 21. They're grown adults married with kids, and they remember being in Miss Lisa's class. I guarantee you the young people that have come through this youth program will remember Terry and Lisa from their retreat, from the meetings they've had on Sunday. They're not rich, they're not famous, they're not powerful, they're significant. Your parents used to make all your decisions for you. And little by little, you began to make some of your own. You guys are making a lot of your own. The seniors are right at the place where they're going to make virtually all of their own. Hopefully they'll consider their parents' advice, but they will make their own decisions going forward. And their life will turn out based upon what they decide to do, what they choose. Will you choose a sufficient life, seniors? Will you choose a successful life? Or will you choose to be significant? Will there be a day in the future when others will look at your life and say, for such a time as this, they were placed upon the earth? What's God's plan for you? I can tell you the only peace and the only joy, the only security that you'll ever find in this world, in this life, is to be right smack in the middle of God's plan for you. Outside of that, you're living in a whirlwind. For such a time as this, you were placed upon the earth. That's a question for you to answer for yourself. Let me close us in prayer and we'll go downstairs and celebrate. Father in heaven, I ask you right now to forgive us for our many sins, for the many times that we have had our back toward you, for many times, like myself, that we've physically walked away from you and ignored you, recognizing that there was a plan, that there was a purpose, but we chose to ignore it. Lord, for these young people in the front, for our seniors specifically, from this day forward, Father, I ask your blessing upon them. I ask your hand upon their life. Father, guard their hearts. If they don't already know it, Father, illuminate your plan for their life. That thing for which they were born. And steer them toward that. Father, you've given us so many great examples of what a significant life looks like. Father, for these seniors, I just pray that each and every one of them in the future will be a person that someone will point their finger and say, for such a time as this, they were placed upon the earth. Thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, and may his name be glorified in our lives. In his name we pray. Amen. Class dismissed. Let's go downstairs and celebrate.